They look like plastic decoys.
All right. As you all know, the club over the last number of years, we've done a lot of temporary exhibits at the War Museum. We participated in the Waterfowl Festival in their artifacts display. And we've always had the theme of the wonderful variety of Delmarva decoys. The peninsula is about 180 miles long, and I would bet that there's not another place in North America that has as much variety of decoys as we do here on the Delmarva Peninsula. About a year ago, I talked with Mike Tarquini at the Havre de Grace Decoy Museum. He's the president. And he told me he was looking for a temporary exhibit to put in, and I volunteered the club. Over the years, Gary's done most of the legwork and push-ups to put our exhibits together, and I decided I would just volunteer to do this one. So we're going to, you want to do the peninsula? Here's the Delmarva Peninsula. I know you guys are all aware of this, but what we've done is I've listed every town on the peninsula where we have examples in the exhibit. And what I want to do is I want to start at Smith Island, which is the southernmost part of the peninsula, and we're going to go north up into Cecil County, Maryland.
Joe, can you speak up just a little bit, please?
Sure, I'll give that a shot. All right, we're going to start in Smith Island. There were 3 decoy makers from Smith Island: Alma Fitchett, Robert Andrews, and John Henry Downs. They all worked at the life-saving station, or the lighthouse, on Smith Island, and they made in decoys that they used to hunt. This is a curlew by Alma Fitchett. It's a running curlew. You can't tell in the picture too well, but it's got a really nice cocked head. And this belongs to me, and it's one of my favorite Virginia shorebirds. This is a pair of buffleheads by Robert Andrews. Most of the decoys you find from Smith Island are shorebirds. It's very rare that you actually find decoys. There are some black ducks that were made on Smith Island, but this is the only pair of buffleheads I've ever seen. I liked them so much that I actually underbid them when Dave Nolan bought them at auction about a year or 2 ago. It's a really rare pair of buffleheads by Robert Andrews. And like I say, hopefully you all might get up to the museum to actually see these in the flesh. This is a John Henry Downs black duck. This belongs to Cameron McIntyre, who lent it for the exhibit. Most of his decoys have this kind of a dip behind the neck with a high rise across the back. Has a bit of a low head posture. His son, John Hanson Downs, also made decoys, although they're more current. But this is a really nice example of a John Henry Downs black duck. We had just had a cob exhibit at the Havre de Grace Decoy Museum. That was from Tommy O'Connor's collection. So I didn't pick a whole lot of cob decoys for this. I felt it might be a little bit repetitive. But I really like this little teeny bufflehead with an inletted neck. It's got a nice little turn to it. It's a really petite decoy. It used to be in Charlie Hunter's collection, and this is also a part of Dave Nolan's collection. This is an Eli Dowdy bluebill. Eli Dowdy was from Hog Island, which was just north of Cobb Island. And they have a nice, this is a really nice example. The heads are always set back a little bit on the bird. I guess it gave it a little balance. But that's a classic Hog Island decoy. This belongs to me. It's a Walter Brady Canada goose. There's a lot of discussion nowadays One thing, these are also from Hog Island, or this is also from Hog Island. One thing that's different about the Walter Brady decoys from Eli Dowdy decoys is the bill is drilled through the head and splined. So that bill actually does move a little bit. And that's one characteristic that you'll find on decoys that they attribute to Walter Brady. Some people now believe that Walter Brady never made any decoys, but they may have been made by some other member of the Dowdy family. And that's a really nice example. This is the other Cobb Island decoy in the exhibit, and I did get this from Tommy O'Connor. It's a really nice swimming Nathan Cobb brant. It's hollow carved. It's got the classic split tail. The head is made out of a limb. They call it a root head. Nathan Cobb decoys are probably among the most animated decoys that were made and used anywhere in North America, and this is a great example. I also borrowed this from Tommy O'Connor. It's a Charlie Birch swan. Charlie Birch was from Willis Wharf, so we're moving up the peninsula a little bit. Supposedly, Charlie Birch made a rig of 2 or 3 dozen swan, I believe, in the 30s. Most of them were used, I believe, in the Cambridge, Maryland area. They're very desirable. Charlie Birch swan have sold for as much as 200 grand, so collectors agree with that. This is a Charlie Birch brant. It's hollow carved. It's in original paint. This belongs to
Eddie White.
Eddie White, thank you. It's a deeper body model. His solid body decoys have a tendency to be a bit thinner, but his hollow birds are a little more full-bodied, and this is a wonderful example. And I understand that once we get it out of the exhibit in December, it's going to be for sale. So
It's for sale now.
okay, you can buy it. You can buy it out of the exhibit.
Olddecoys.com.
Way to go, Gare.
This is what they call a Gargatha-style red-breasted merganser hen by Ira Hudson. These are arguably Ira Hudson's earliest decoys, and they're extremely folky. They have wonderful crest carving, a very thin bill, the tail split in the back. Most of these that I've seen have had the bills knocked out, and this is, like I say, this is Gary Campbell's. It's a wonderful example. And I wouldn't be surprised if that bird was made as early as 1910, 1915. All right, this is Ira Hudson hissing Canada goose. This also belongs to Gary Campbell. I really think that Ira Hudson made some of the most desirable hissing models of any decoy maker. I know Harry Shor's made hissers, and there are other New Jersey makers. You can find New England hissers by Lincoln or George Boyd, but I've always liked Hudson hissing geese. It's got wonderful original paint on the side. That's Hudson's terrific paint, and this is a wonderful, wonderful example. All right, this Ira Hudson pintail, this belongs to Tyler Bryan. And what is particularly special about this decoy is I believe that the Hudson family saw Ward Brothers pintails and tried to emulate their paint pattern. And it's a good chance that this bird was painted by Delbert Hudson, who is Ira's youngest son. And most people think that he was probably the most talented painter in the family. But that's a nice 40s model, flat bottom, pintail drake. This is my decoy. It's Ira Hudson Yellowlegs. I've seen a lot of Hudson Yellowlegs over the years, and interestingly enough, I've never seen any really what you could definitely say was any other shorebird species. It's got nice scratch feather paint on the back. It's got a really nice fat belly. I actually bought this shorebird from a lady in New York City, New York City, who took photographs of the pieces that she had for sale in Central Park and sent me the pictures. And that's where I acquired that. This is also mine. It's a Doug Jester curlew, also from Chincoteague. It has what we call a shark fin up on the back. His best shorebirds have that. Now, Doug Jester, in addition to curlews, I've seen dowitchers and black-belly plovers, so he did make other, and a peep. So he did make other species of decoys, but I love the elevated posture on the head, like it's looking up in the air. This is a pair of Doug-Jested hooded mergansers. These also belong to Gary Campbell. Jester mergansers probably are the most popular species among collectors. He made a lot of them. This pair here has never been rigged, so it was never used. That's why it's in such excellent condition. And you can see, like in the back here, he did a real freehand texturing, or a freehand, the way he would do the strokes on the paint on that drake. This is a pair of Charles Jester buffleheads. These belong to Bert Campbell. Charles Jester was Doug's cousin, also from Chincoteague. Mostly all of the birds that I've seen from him are either hollow carved, which is very unusual for Chincoteague, or they're made out of balsa. I've seen balsa examples. This is arguably the best pair of Jester decoys that I've seen. The hen, even though it's got a lot of paint loss, has got a wonderful sculptural form. The head is kind of tucked down a little bit. I've seen a few other drakes, but they're rare. And this is a Dave Umbrella Watson Brant. This belongs to Bert Campbell as well. It's probably got the best paint I've ever seen on a Watson Brant. Supposedly the person that Bert purchased it from bought it directly from Umbrella Watson. It's hollow, and it probably had never been used. He was from Chincoteague, I believe, originally, and then moved to Willis Wharf. Yeah. This is a Miles Hancock hissing Canada goose, also from Chincoteague. This belongs to me. It has a turned, cocked head, and you can see the crook up on the top of the neck is higher than the head. It doesn't show in the picture very well, but the head is just cocked just a little bit. Gives it a little bit of a quizzical look. It's in near mint condition. This is a Miles Hancock red-breasted merganser hen. It's got wonderful scratch paint on it. It's got a solid crest. This belongs to Chris Pusey. Most of Hancock's decoys were made out of cottonwood. Is this one cedar?
No, that's cotton.
That is, okay. Most of them were made out of cottonwood. Some of his early decoys were made out of cedar and are sanded, but mergansers, again, are probably the most popular species for Miles Hancock decoys. They're very folky, and they were very effective as hunting decoys. Charles Clark was also from Chincoteague. He did make mergansers, but primarily what he's noted for are his shorebirds. And there are some curlews. Mostly what you find are yellowlegs and plovers. And like I say, these are Gary Campbell's. They're in great condition. The plover's got quite a nice fat belly and a nice hump to the back. It's a real nice example. Will Mason. This belongs to Josh Barfield, who is the Will Mason man. And for years, they called these decoys Lou Birches, and who was supposedly a cousin of Charles Birch. But finally, Cameron McIntyre was going door to door through the eastern shore of Virginia about 20 years ago, and he went to this lady's trailer, and she had some of these, and she goes, her father made them. Her father was Will Mason. He's from Parksley, Virginia, which is on the bay side of the peninsula in Virginia. This belongs to Rod Benjamin. It's a Travis Ward canvasback. Travis was the father of Lemon Steve Ward. And when Lemon Steve started making decoys, I'm sure they were working with their father, and so these were the decoys that they were probably originally fashioning duplicates of, they all have a flat bottom, they all have a narrow breast, they all have an overhanging tail, and usually have a wide, towards the rear of the decoy is a little wider. This one I forgot to take a picture of, so we got a picture of it out of the showcase. This belongs to Casey Foltz. It's a Ward Brothers knothead canvasback, and the term is because of the knot on the top of the head. It's got a little groove cut behind the neck where the wing separation is, and a little elevation in the wings. These are among the earlier decoys that Lemon Steve made. A friend of mine purchased from a guy in California an excellent example of one of these knothead canvasbacks. And the guy that sold it to him had the receipt from where it was purchased at a sporting goods store in San Francisco in 1924. So it's pretty outrageous that early in their careers that they were actually, wholesaling their decoys to sporting goods stores clear across the country. This is a Ward Brothers Bishop's Head style Canada goose. They all have different bill carving than you find on most Ward geese. They have that little groove cut behind the neck, and they all have this little hump under the tail. They were made for the Bishop's Head Gun Club, and I have no idea what motivated them to make a particular style for this gun club, but they're all called Bishop's Head style or Bishop's Head geese, so I'm assuming maybe they didn't make them for anybody else of this style. And this belongs to John Collier. It's a great example. All right, this is probably a Ward decoy that more people would be familiar with. You honestly could do a whole exhibit of Ward decoys of the variety of styles they did over their long career. This is what we call a 1936 model mallard hen. It belongs to John Collier as well. We did an article in an issue of Decoy Magazine a couple issues ago that we really believe that Lem, who mostly did scratch painting on his earlier decoys, started to paint feathers on these 36 models. And we believe that Dr. Edgar Burke, who was an artist, a graphic artist, collaborated with Lem to teach him how to do this. This is a Noah B. Sterling Goldeneye. This is my favorite Crisfield decoy. Bill Purnell lent it to me for the exhibit, and I was really pleased that he would. He's 87 years old, and he had to give it up for 6 months. I don't know if I would have been willing to do that. But to me, you know, the pointed head, the long paddle tail, again, it's got a narrow breast with a really wide aft to it. This is the epitome of the root of Crisfield decoys. It's a fantastic piece of folk art. And it would be the #1 pick I would take out of this exhibit if I could have one decoy.
Who's this at?
Bill Purnell's. All right, these belong to Henry Stansberry. These are a pair of Lloyd Tyler buffle heads. Lloyd was referred to in Crisfield as the poor man's decoy maker because his neighbors, the Wards, charged more than he did. This is a wonderful match pair of rigmate buffle heads. They've got nice humpbacks. They got good paint. They're flat bottom like all Crisfield decoys. Interestingly enough, Lloyd Tyler actually went to art school in Toronto. You know, so he's, and you would never believe it. You know, you would never think it because his birds have a little bit more of a primitive look compared to his neighbors' decoys. But that's a wonderful pair of buffle heads. Henry Stansberry. This is Gary Campbell's. It's a Lloyd Tyler widgeon. They shot a lot of widgeon in Crisfield. It was a decoy they hunted a lot down there. They called them bald crowns because of the white on the top of their head. You can see the surface is almost like he finished it with a rasp. Very simply done, nicely painted. Has a little bit of a swimming posture. This is a pair of Lloyd Sterling blue-winged teal. These belong to Griff Evans. Lloyd's not related directly to Noah B. Sterling. And I'm going to just take a diversion here for a second. I've been considering working on a book on Crisfield decoys, and I don't know if I have the energy to do that. But a friend of mine, Mike Daly, I asked him to do a little genealogical research for me on where these families from Crisfield came from. Lloyd Sterling, Noah B. Sterling, Lloyd Tyler, and Travis Ward. Turns out that there was a couple from England that moved and landed in Smith Island. In fact, all of the backgrounds of these Crisfield makers first landed in Smith Island and lived there. There's a couple.
Chesapeake Bay, Smith Island?
Yes. Yeah, right off of Crisfield. Right. And eventually they all came to Crisfield because of the economic opportunities, particularly after the train was brought down to Crisfield. But if you go back to the late 17th century, every one of these decoy makers are related from the same couple. They all have the same great, 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 great grandfather.
Wow.
And they're the people who came from England, a couple?
Yes, yes. And then, like I say, they eventually, because of the economic, because Crisfield at that time in the 1600s really wasn't habitable. But, you know, because they always say it's a city that's built on oyster shells.
Right.
So it eventually, these families did move. You know, probably they were 6 or 8 cousins by the time they got to Crisfield. But anyhow, this is a wonderful pair of Lloyd Sterling blue-winged teal. And like I say, I've seen them without the glass eyes, which are also quite nice.
Just out of curiosity, because you did that study, it's not decoy related. Was Smith Island back in the late 1600s, early 1700s, sort of the anchor community for that part of, like the shore, as you said, wasn't habitable. It was marshland, mosquito heaven, and all.
It was the first.
Were most of the people who came.
It was the first inhabited area in the state of Maryland.
Was Smith Island.
Was Smith Island. Captain John Smith came up the bay, and there it was. And it was way bigger then than it is today. All right, now we're going up to Cambridge, Maryland. We're going a little further north. This is a Ed Phillips Canada goose. This is from the collection of Larry Foxwell. When I asked Larry if he would lend me one of his Phillips geese, he asked me,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
he goes, I've got 13. Which one do you want? I said, just pick a good one. And this is a little bit what we call a bit of like a tiger stripe paint on it. You can see the striations of paint in it. It's got a very tall sentinel head. It's a great example, and I enjoyed having it in my house for a couple of weeks before we put it in the exhibit. All right, these are also by Ed Phillips. It's a pair of pintails. These also belong to Larry Foxwell. Again, hens by Ed Phillips are extremely rare of any species. So when I asked Larry, I said, I want a pair of your Phillips decoys. He goes, you want pintails, widgeon, canvasbacks, redheads, or bluebills? So I said, I'll take the pintails.
It's funny about hens.
Yeah.
Making hens for some reason.
Yeah. This is a Joe Travers mallard. His from Vienna. This belongs to Ronnie Newcomb. Mostly you see Joe Travers decoys are cork-bodied black ducks. And they're really some of the nicest cork-bodied black ducks, you know, as far as they have carving actually in the body. But he made very few wooden decoys. I've seen mallards and I've seen widgeons. This has a turn to the head about 30 degrees. It's got a really high wing separation. This is the best example I've ever seen of a Joe Travers mallard, a wooden mallard. I love it. All right, this pair of golden eyes are by Slater Robinson. These also belong to Ronnie Newcomb. He's from Bishop's Head, Maryland, which I understand is a little north of Crisfield. And I'm guessing, is that where the Bishop's Head Gun Club was?
Yes.
Okay. This is a maker, until I joined this club, or until we started meeting, I had never heard of. But his decoys are very desirable. I've seen golden eyes, and I think I've seen bluebills. So it's mostly divers.
I think they're pre-1900 too.
Okay. Hooper's Island, also in Dorchester County, is probably most noted for its merganser decoys. This one belongs to Eddie Dean. It's by an unknown maker. I love the way the bill has that slight dip to the end, the crest carving, the alertness and the posture. We borrowed this from Eddie when we did our first exhibit at the War Museum about 5 years ago. And we had to give the museum an insurance appraisal on the items in the exhibit. I said, Eddie, how much do you want to appraise this for? He goes, $1,500. I said, I'll buy it. Of course, he didn't sell it to me, but it's a wonderful, unknown maker. It's a wonderful example of a Hooper's Island merganser. All right, we got here a pair of Ed Parsons buffalo heads. These belong to Bert Campbell as well. His from Talbot County, Oxford, Maryland. Without a doubt, the little buffalo heads that Ed Parsons made are the most desirable of his species. I've seen canvasbacks, I've seen golden eyes, but the little buffalo heads, I've seen some of them that were about yay big. They're really tiny, and they have an inletted weight in the bottom of them, like a figure-8 inletted weight in the bottom, which is a identifying characteristic of his decoys.
So something real quick on those. When I bought them at the auction, I actually talked to the family of the people, of the lady that had them. They sat in an antique store in Easton for years and no one ever bought them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What were the staples in the back?
We think they're from a jerk string.
Okay, I was wondering. Because they're on the chest, too.
All right. This is from Kent Island, Maryland. It's a Jim Cockey Bluebill. This belongs to Steve Durrell. Steve probably has one of the better collections of Cockey family decoys. Jim and his brother Frank both made decoys. And when he asked me what I wanted, I said, just pick a good one. And this is a really clean example of a bluebill, and is very a good example of a Cockey family decoy. This might be my second favorite bird in the whole exhibit. It's a Captain John Smith preening pintail. It's from Ocean City, Maryland. This belongs to Henry Stansberry. I've seen a couple sleeping black ducks, but the way that sprigtail comes up to the top of the head of that decoy, it just has a wonderful form. I first saw this decoy, this belongs to Henry Stansberry. I first saw this decoy, Henry's brother-in-law, who was an antique dealer, was set up at the Talbot Community Center. This is about 25 years ago, and he had that on his table. And he had it priced at $6,000. And anybody who collects Captain John Smith decoys know that you don't normally have to pay anywhere near that for one of his decoys. But Henry liked it. And he walked up and he tried to bargain with his brother-in-law. He goes, "That's a ridiculous price." Dick McIntyre walked up to him and he goes, "Tell you what, Captain, I'll give you $5,000 in cash for it." Henry gave his brother-in-law a check for $6,000. All right, this is an August Heinefeld. He's from Rock Hall, Maryland. Most of the Rock Hall decoys, we believe, were painted by John Glenn's wife. But this doesn't look like typical Glenn paint, although this is very similar. But it's a really, really clean example. And it's, a nice, there are three, particularly good makers from Rock Hall, and August Heinefeld is one of them.
Is that Richard?
Oh yeah, it's Richard Petty's. This is a John Glenn widgeon. John Glenn was the most prolific and maker from Rock Hall, or maybe not with Urey, but he's probably the most desirable maker, are John Glenn decoys. This belongs to David Farrow. Widgeons and pintails are probably some of his more artistic paint patterns, or the more artistic paint patterns, but this is a pretty nice example. It's got a little bit of an elevated neck. It's got a little higher head than you see on most of them. All right, these belong to Rod Benjamin. This is a pair of Jess Urey high head pintails. Urey pintails are extremely rare, and high head pintails are probably almost impossible to find. So this is a very nice, desirable pair, and they're in good original paint. All right, now we're going up to Cecil County. We're going up to the top of the peninsula. John B. Graham is the originator, or what people consider to be the originator of the Cecil County style. Has a slight neck shelf, It's got a tiny little paddle tail. It's got a little bump on the bill, like what some people would call a Roman nose. This belongs to Cameron McIntyre. It's got a wonderful old crusty surface, and this bird might be 175 years old. All right, this belongs to Will Frang. This is a Leonard Pryor preenie mallard. He was from Chesapeake City, which is where the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal comes in. It's got three very rare characteristics for an upper Chesapeake Bay decoy. Number one, it's a mallard. You hardly see any mallards. Most of you see divers. It's a preener. I've only know of a few lockered decoys that you see as a preener. And thirdly, it's hollow. John Graham made some hollow black ducks, but there aren't many hollow decoys, and to have all three of those into one bird is really special. This came out of the Pryor family collection. They were sold by his granddaughter at a Pete Richardson auction, along with maybe 50 other Pryor decoys.
It's a world record.
Yeah, this bird sold for like $67,000 or something, and this was at least 20, 25 years ago.
At that auction, when Will bought that, he and another guy were talking, and Pete Richardson got up and admonished them and told them to shut up and sit down. Will was so upset that he wrote the check for the decoy and walked out and got in his car. And about 15 miles up the road, he figured that he didn't have the decoy, so he had to turn around and go back.
I told Will to tell that auctioneer to stick it up his ass.
John, you were banished for life, so that's
Princess Anne. I got banished for life.
All right, we're back to Charlestown, Maryland. This is a George Washington Barnes canvasback hen. This belongs to Tyler Bryan. It's a classic Wash Barnes decoy with a hard chine, a hump in its back, the head's postured up. What makes this bird fairly special, it's the only hen I've ever seen by Wash Barnes. I've seen a dozen, 2 dozen drakes. I've never seen another hen. I'm not saying they're not out there, but I haven't run across it. All right, here, this is the one decoy that doesn't belong to a member of the club. This belongs to a guy named, I think it's Dave Henderson. Anyhow, Tyler Bryan gives me a call one day and he says, I went to this guy's house and I saw this decoy. I said, okay. And he sends me pictures of it. He sends me this picture, or a picture of this. And he sends me this canvasback hen. And Taylor Boy's from Perryville, which is on the Susquehanna River. I said, Tyler, that's the best paint I've ever seen on a pair of Taylor Boyd canvasbacks. I mean, the paint's crisp, it's perfect. Then he sends me another picture. That's a top-down shot of that decoy. It's painted as a hen on one side and it's painted as a drake on the other side. That's not a pair of Taylor Boyd canvasbacks, that's one decoy. So when we got, I got to go with Tyler to this fellow's house to see it, and it was almost unbelievable. The guy didn't even know what he had. He didn't know who was a Taylor Boyd, he didn't know if it was a hen or a drake, he didn't know anything about it. And I said, you know, I'm just putting together this exhibit at the Havre de Grace Decoy Museum, and would you be willing to lend this to us? And he was kind enough to do that. So I've never seen anything like it. I've seen decoys by decoy makers painted like a red head on one side and a bluebill on the other that were hunted, but I've never seen, you know, a hen and a drake painted. And I don't know if he was doing this to show his painting skills to somebody. I don't know what to do, you know, what drove him to do that, but anyhow, that's the last bird in the exhibit. And I hope this exhibit is going to be on display through the first Wednesday of December. In addition to this exhibit, they presently have still at the Havre de Grace Museum, if you've not had a chance to go, they've got a exhibit of Daddy Holly decoys. It's like 50 or 60 Daddy Holly decoys, is the most biggest exhibit by one maker, and many of them with different brands. They have an exhibit of Blair family decoys that was lent to them or given to them on, you can have them forever, of their family rig of Blair decoys. And just in the last couple of weeks, they installed a new temporary exhibit on the collection of Ted and Judy Harmon. And there's must be 7,500 decoys in that exhibit, and some of the finest New England decoys, particularly Massachusetts, that you'll ever see. So hopefully you all get
I
a
said, if you want to see $10 million of decoys in one space, go to Havre de Grace and see the Ted Harmon decoy
Yeah.
collection.
Did you say 7,500?
75 or 100.
Okay.
And that's not all of them.
Because I heard she had 5,000 Crow minis.
That's not all of them. That's what they put a part of, of the exhibit. And I know because I think they're going to have some of Harmon stuff in the November auction, although I'm not positive. But I know that all the decoys in this exhibit will be sold. So go pick out something you like and save your money, because there ain't nothing going to be cheap. And they'll be sold between April and July, is what I understand.
Now, our exhibit up there, it ends in December.
Yes.
Are we being invited back for another one?
Yes, they got me in about a year ago after I agreed to do this exhibit. They said, "What do you think about making this a reoccurring thing? Like you take one out and you put another one in." And I said, "Well, I said, I don't know if we want to do it right away or not, but I said, we'll bring it up to the club and see if we want to do that. Without a doubt, we've got plenty of quality decoys in this club that's as good as the ones that we've got in this exhibit. So it's not like we couldn't do a kick-ass exhibit with a whole new selection of 50, 60 birds. And I've already had a few people come to me and say, "Let me know if you need any more of my birds for your next exhibit." So, it wouldn't be hard for us to pull this out and put another one in. I haven't addressed that with them, like if they want us, means they would like us to do it in December or down the road.
Okay.
Okay.
Good job, Jeff.